a huge difference.
I call the Honourable Member Gareth Hughes.
Kia ora, Mr Speaker.
Kia ora, tēnā koe.
Kia koutou, kia ora. Mr Speaker, it's a privilege to take a call on the budget debate, and a budget which has been called so many names in the last week: the paper boy, the paper girl budget, the nickel and dime budget, the black budget. Mr Speaker, it's been called a zero budget, not just because of the zero spending, the $8 billion deficit, because of that zero hope. Zero compassion for those 200,000 Kiwis kids growing up in poverty. Zero plan how we're going to boost our economy. And we heard it from the Prime Minister, we heard it from the Finance Minister, and now we've heard it again from the Conservation Minister. The absence of the recognition that our economy depends on our environment. I can't believe we had the Conservation Minister not use the word conservation, environment once in her speech. This is why our valuable clean green brand has been costed at over $20 billion to our gross domestic product. Our economy depends on the environment, and this is what's lacking. Mr Speaker, the budget could also be called the drill it, mine it, frack it, cut it, sell it budget, Mr Speaker, because these are the only planks this government has for economic development: to drill it, to mine it, to frack it, to cut it and sell it. And I'd like to touch on three of them: their plans to dig more holes, dig more wells across New Zealand as the only plan they've got. And Mr Speaker, I'd like to look at the costs associated with it, the economic impacts, and say, Mr Speaker, it's just not worth it. It's not worth it for New Zealand. So we're exporting a bit of oil at the moment. We exported just over $2 billion last financial year. Obviously, it's important. We need to be exporting. We need to be earning foreign exchange. Mr Speaker, we're doing so well because the price of oil is so high. But let's look at the flip side. We're importing more than $8.3 billion of oil in return. Mr Speaker, we're not even getting a third of the way there to self-sufficiency. Looking forward, this is a major strategic risk. It's already 16% of our imports, our single biggest import, that $8 billion fuel bill. Every US $1 price rise and the price of a barrel of oil wipes $40 to $60 million off New Zealand's gross domestic product. So, facing those big strategic risks, governments, councils, militaries, all around the world are getting together and developing oil reduction plans. But our government's got no plan to even start planning to reduce our dependency on oil. Instead, what they do have is a plan to increase our dependency on oil and look at production. So we're addicted to oil. This government somehow found in an austerity zero budget $14 billion to borrow to throw at these uneconomic roads of national significance. All this is going to do is increase our dependency on oil. And their second leg of their plan is to drill it, mine it, frack it. This brings huge risks to New Zealand. The only way we could be a net oil exporter, as the Energy Minister grandly proclaims in the briefing for the incoming Energy Minister, is to drill deep. Very, very deep, Mr Speaker. We're talking as much as 3 kilometres down, as we've seen recently for the permits being given off the coast of Wellington, Christchurch, Otago, that this government didn't even bother to consult with the people or the councils in those regions, whereas they could be drilling between 1 and 3 kilometres deep, and this brings a huge risk. Because what we're talking about is exploratory wells this summer, and when you look at America with the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, another exploratory well, this came with a massive environmental cost and a $40 billion clean-up. New Zealand's got nowhere near the level of capability to deal with the spill. I mean, this government couldn't even deal with the Rena oil spill, a spill of a couple of hundred tonnes on the coast of Bay of Plenty. And this is why New Zealanders are so concerned about this government's risky deep-sea oil drilling plan, is because, Mr Speaker, oil on our beaches isn't academic anymore. Kiwis can see it, they can touch it, they can smell it, and they don't want it on our beaches. They don't want to risk it, especially when the economics don't themselves stack up. What we know is from the government's deep-sea oil plans, there's going to be hardly any jobs, hardly any taxes, hardly any royalties, and we know the profits are going to go offshore. So Kiwis could be facing 100% of the environmental risks for 5% of the value of the oil. We've been rated as having the 4th lowest government take, that's royalties plus taxes, of any producing nation in the world. This government is selling us far too cheap. When you add on the pages of tax exemptions foreign oil companies can access in New Zealand, when you look at the tens of millions of dollars this government is throwing at them, picking winners in an absolutely unsustainable field, you can see there's going to be hardly any royalties, hardly any taxes, and Mr Speaker, there's going to be hardly any jobs. Because what we know in Taranaki, it's got the lowest employment per percentage of GDP of any sector of the Taranaki economy. We know last year the oil industry successfully lobbied the national government to get foreign oil workers put on the immigration skilled shortages list so they can expedite foreign workers to work on foreign-owned, foreign-controlled oil rigs, yet we're the ones facing the costs. We're the ones facing the environmental risks, and we're going to see hardly any jobs, hardly any taxes, hardly any royalties, and we know the profits, 100%, are going to go offshore. So a spill would bring considerable risk to our economy that it doesn't stack up. A spill would destroy that valuable clean green brand. A spill would be catastrophic for our fisheries and aquaculture industries. A spill would also mean it's the taxpayer coming to pick up the tab. And this is what we've seen in the arena. Last week the government appropriated $35 million. Former Minister Nick Smith reckons we could be looking at a $130 million bill, but because this government has sat on their hands, refused to sign up to the 1996 Bunkers Convention, refused to update the Resource Management Act, still carrying over the woefully inadequate penalties to the new EEZ bill, this government's sitting on their hands. They're quite happy for the taxpayer to pick up the tab, and this is the big problem in the budget, Mr Speaker, is we've got $14 billion for new motorways, tens of millions of dollars to clean oil up off our beaches, $1.7 billion to throw and subsidise polluters over the next 3 years through the emissions trading scheme, $2 billion for tax cuts for the wealthiest Kiwis. The maths are mad, Mr Speaker. They're not in New Zealand's interest. There's no hope, no vision, no compassion, no plan going forward, Mr Speaker, and that's why the Green Party is proposing concrete, realistic solutions that are going to benefit our environment and benefit our economy. Probably the best example is, and to give the government credit, it's good to be working with them on the Warm Up New Zealand Heat Smart insulation scheme. You know, Mr Speaker, our economics experts have calculated we've seen $1.2 billion in direct benefits from that scheme since it's been running. So there's some win-win opportunities out there. We wish the government would be grabbing the rest of them. Instead of selling the state assets, Mr Speaker, we should be driving these companies to export. The global renewable energy market could be a $100 billion global marketplace in the next few years. If we just got 1% of that, Mr Speaker, exporting our renewable, exporting our geothermal, exporting our hydro experience, expertise and technologies, we could be providing tens of thousands of jobs, delivering hundreds of millions of dollars of economic benefit to the advantage of New Zealand, providing good Kiwi jobs, providing high-wage jobs. We wouldn't need to see all those Kiwis, that Mount Eden Stadium full of Kiwis, fligging over to the ditch every year. So there are solutions out there. We're going to keep proposing them until the government gets the right idea. We're not holding our breath because their only plan for the economy is to drill it, mine it, frack it, cut it, sell it, and it's no plan for New Zealand. Kia ora.
I call the honourable member Todd McClay.
Mr Speaker, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to rise so early in this debate and speak on what was an